potentially more attractive.
American labs have tested around 50,000 coronavirus samples from the UK. They were taken to the US on chartered flights from Stansted Airport after teething problems in British labs. Barack Obama has described Donald Trump's handling of the coronavirus pandemic as an absolute chaotic disaster. Speaking to his former staff in a conference call, the former president blamed a "what's in it for me" attitude in the current administration. The White House says Mr. Trump's response to the outbreak has been unprecedented and has saved American lives. And the weather: cloud and rain across southern Scotland, Northern Ireland and northern England, brighter spells and some isolated showers across the southern parts of the UK, a high of 18 degrees. From Global's newsroom, you're up to date.
Imagine winning 10 grand. Yes! Set for life, you can win 10 grand every month for 30 years.
Get in! Amazing! Woo! Yes! Sweet! Unbelievable!
Set for life from the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen. Play Monday online or on the app. Prize may be capped. Rules, procedures and game-specific rules apply. Players must be 16 or over.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Andrew Castle.
And a very good morning to you. It's just coming up to 3 minutes past 7. It's Sunday morning. It's the 10th of May. And, you know, there's been a huge build-up to what the Prime Minister Boris Johnson will say at 7 p.m. tonight. You can catch it here, a special programme with Ian Dale. Lots of build-up to what he might say. And we're sort of being gently led down the slope to expecting virtually nothing. And I think that's probably going to be closer to the truth than anything fantastic and dramatic that's going to change our lives. I don't know about you, but I'm still stuck right in the middle of all this. I must say, January, February, was it that late, or was it even December? No, it was probably January and February. We're talking about this thing, and I heard reactions. I heard, oh, don't even get me going on Professor Neil Ferguson. I'm glad he's gone. Goodness gracious me, the hypocrisy. You know, you heard 250,000 as a number that could die. You heard 500,000 as a number that could die, and it hasn't transpired. It isn't going to, is it? But when it was first talked about, this pandemic, this coronavirus, I can't remember the first time I heard it, COVID-19, I did not believe those numbers. I was cynical about it. I was talking about flu numbers and how we didn't overreact in 2014, 2015, 28,000 excess deaths then. We still don't know how many excess deaths there are now. So I oscillate between we've got to lock down forever and we've got to get out of it, because economically this is costing us everything that everybody's ever worked for, and the next generation are going to have to work an extra sort of 20 years. Like, you know all of the arguments. But every time I read something from somebody brilliant, on the one hand saying it's a disaster and look at the health outcomes of those people who are now not showing up at NHS, not having GPs appointments, every time I read one of those I say end lockdown. And every time I read an account of somebody who's become ill or somebody who's lost a loved one, then that's totally different. So I'm oscillating. How are you? I mean, where do you expect the Prime Minister to place himself tonight? And what do you need to hear? You know, what's going to mean anything to you? 0345 606 973. All right, it's 7:05. Let's get the very latest. Here is Thomas Dunn.
Good morning, Andrew. And as we know and have known for some time, Boris Johnson's going to be laying out his plans to the nation tonight about how the next steps in the UK's fight against the coronavirus are going to be taking shape. Later, he's going to announce his plans to gradually ease the lockdown in the United Kingdom, but we have been told they will be limited for the moment. Shadow Foreign Secretary and Labour's Wigan MP Lisa Nandy has said the Prime Minister's message must be very clear.
The government, instead of doing regular off-the-record briefings, just comes out with real clarity about what is going to happen and why, so that people understand the basis of the rules. Because I think that if people understand the rules, then they're much more likely to follow them.
So what exactly are we going to hear? Well, he's expected to announce a new slogan telling people to stay alert, control the virus and to save lives. We're also expected to hear some detail from the Prime Minister about how businesses can get up and running again, when schools might be able to return to normal, and if the use of face masks is going to become a more regular sight while people are out shopping or exercising. And of course, many people are still waiting to hear about the restart of sporting events with the summer on the horizon. The Premier League have spoken about their plans with opposition on both sides. The government says for now there won't be any dramatic changes straight away. These people in
much indeed. Best to you and yours. Mark Fielder is a professor of microbiology at Kingston University. 7:15 is the time. Harry Phibbs, journalist at Conservative Home. Morning to you, Harry. How much pressure is the Prime Minister feeling this morning and today ahead of this speech, do you suppose?
Morning. He's obviously going to be under a great deal of pressure, and I think whereas before there was general mood of unity for the lockdown, it's obviously as you've been discussing this morning, people are much more conflicted, and there's much more being pulled in different directions. So I think he's under pressure, trying to balance all the different factors.
And front page of the Mail on Sunday, Hancock's give me a break bust up with the Prime Minister. Are they under pressure, this inner cabinet?
And that, I think, gives an example, doesn't it? In a way, wouldn't be too surprised, even in normal circumstances, that the Prime Minister would be challenging one of his cabinet colleagues about performance, about meeting a target, and that the cabinet colleague would be pushing back quite strongly. That would be what's a bit concerning for the government is that those sort of conversations leaked. I mean, there used to be when Theresa May was the Prime Minister, that was sort of on a daily basis, and there had been under Boris Johnson actually a tighter collective responsibility in few of those stories leaking out. But I don't think it's surprising that people working very hard under great pressure that you get some fairly robust conversations taking place.
Indeed. Well, Harry, thank you very much indeed. We look forward to it later on, 7 o'clock. Boris Johnson will speak Ian Day with a special programme here on LBC. Harry is a journalist at Conservative Home. Well, we talk about our leadership over here. I don't mind people shouting at each other if they're trying to make some of the most difficult and important decisions since the Second World War, as is the case at the moment with our governmental response to lockdown and to the pandemic itself. So if they're having a bit of a scrap with each other, fine, get to the right decision, no problem at all with that. In the United States, they're pretty good at rallying. Barack Obama, former president, saying President Trump's handling of the coronavirus crisis in the US has been an absolute chaotic disaster. You would never think it's an election year, would you? We're off to DC in just a moment, and I'll take you through the front pages. The travel this Sunday morning with Joanne Webb.
Thanks, Andrew. Good morning. The A11 Leytonstone Road is closed in both directions in Stratford. Emergency repair works are having to take place after a sinkhole appeared. In Waltham Abbey, there's been an accident on the A121 westbound just before the Sewardstone roundabout, so one lane is closed. In Tottenham, Ashley Roads had to be closed in both directions between Waterweed Way and Down Lane Park, and that's also for emergency repair works. And on the Underground, the Waterloo and City and Circle lines remain suspended. The other lines are running, but to a reduced service.
This is LBC.
When your tenants have a burst pipe, superheroes crashing through the wall isn't going to help anyone. With Direct Line Landlord Emergency added to your policy, we're on it to send a rather super plumber in 4 hours. And guarantee they'll use the doorbell. We can also assemble locksmiths, glaziers, electricians and drainage engineers. Search Direct Line Landlord Emergency. We're on it. Direct Line. Residential properties. Optional add-on up to 1,500 per quarter. Extreme weather conditions may extend response time. Underwritten by UK Insurance Limited.
Hi, I'm Dan from NatWest Manchester Branch. We know life's hard right now, but if coronavirus has affected your finances, we're doing our best to make things easier. If you're a personal customer, you can request a 3-month payment break if you're struggling with your mortgage, loan or credit card. Or if you need help with an existing arranged overdraft, you can get £500 interest-free for 3 months. Remember, every one of us is here to support you. There are lots of ways we can help. Search NatWest Coronavirus.
Eligibility and conditions apply to payment breaks. Overdraft up to your agreed limit if lower than £500.
Authentic Lebanese cuisine by Marouche. Exquisite comfort food. Our restaurants are open for takeaway and deliveries. Wherever you are, we'll try and get it to you. Call in or order through Uber Eats, Deliveroo and Just Eat. Enjoy legendary Lebanese food at home from Marouche. Fancy recreating your own dishes at home? Discover the authentic ingredients imported from Lebanon that we have available at marouche.com.
At Morrison's, discover our new summer barbecue and seafood bars with loads of British fresh fish, all half price. Our fishmongers will expertly fillet and prepare it for you, ready for you to cook at home. Choose from British monkfish, Dover sole, mackerel and many more, all half price. Morrison's, feeding the nation. solution. It's more than our job. Selected stores, subject to availability, excludes online.
Andrew Castle on LBC.
Very good morning to you. Over to America in just a second. I'm just getting the papers slightly organised. Here we are talking about Boris Johnson, what we might expect to hear later on. I'm quite intrigued. If you've built a business, do you remember we were speaking to the CEO of Pure Gym yesterday, Humphrey Cobbold, name of the day, and he was talking about the love that he had for the company and how he built it for over 10 years and how many people it employed, how many visits they have. You know, knows everything about the business, trying to rescue it, trying to save it. I'm always intrigued by those stories, because this is the other side of the, you know, yes, we've got to be locked down forever argument. What about something to go back to when it's all finished? And when you look at the actual numbers at the moment, and of course Mark Fielder, a microbiologist, has just put me right about this. We don't have a vaccine. There's no question we can't risk ourselves. In his mind, we can't risk vast swathes of the population getting so ill that their lives could come under threat by going out and just having the normal that we used to know. There has to be a new normal. But then I look at the mortality rate that other professors talk about, which is still unknown, by the way, but they reckon it could be as low as 0.1% of the population. You compare it with flu and excess deaths in other years, especially ones where, you know, there's things like flu, norovirus, etc. It takes a lot of people. So, you know, I just oscillate. And where are you? 84850 is the text, 0344 Boris Johnson, 7 o'clock tonight. What do you want to hear? What do you expect to hear? Probably a lot less than we want. The Sunday Times this morning: 100,000 dead if UK eases too fast. This is scientists warning. Prime Minister told a very limited room for manoeuvre. That's the problem. That's dampening down expectations. But then we heard the 250,000 from that bloke Neil Ferguson, Professor Neil Ferguson of Imperial. Very influential bloke whose modelling has come under a lot of questioning, all the way back to BSc, foot and mouth, and other times. You know, politicians have to make different decisions than scientists. Led by the science doesn't mean governed by scientists, especially not ones that break their own rules and then resign. Rightly. So that's the Sunday Times today. NHS, for instance, facing a waiting list of 7 million is their second story. You know, what are the implications of that? This is something for a politician to weigh up. How many people are suffering and will continue to suffer if we don't open the doors again? The Mail on Sunday, as I was reporting just a moment ago, Hancock's Give Me a Break bust up with the Prime Minister. Give me a break, a furious bust up with the COVID crisis. Well, fine. People who are in charge are arguing. I haven't got an issue with that at all. Good leak. Daily Mirror, a day of her. Where's the... Daily Mirror. The Observer. No return to work until we feel safe. I'll be addressing this at 10 to 8 this morning. No return to work until we feel safe. This is the unions. Now, I'd call it a land grab in a private conversation, but now I've said it publicly as well. People are going to fight their corner coming out of this, because like tectonic plates, all parts of our country have moved and have shifted. This is just a personal view. Don't you agree, though? And people are going to fight. So, you know, the walking lobby, the cycling lobby we heard a lot about yesterday, the unions, everybody's going to be fighting their corner. Staff need workplace revolution. The Prime Minister is warned. In a letter to the Observer, leaders of the Big Four, Unison, Unite, the GMB and USDOR, together with the TUC, say many of their members have already lost their lives transporting people and goods, protecting the public and caring for the vulnerable. Undeniable. Absolutely undeniable. They want to minimise further deaths at work. Now they are insisting that health and safety, something they say used to be mocked by the free marketeers. Well, we live in a free country. Needs to be radically overhauled and stepped up in all workplaces. How are we going to get back? How do you make a workplace entirely safe? Sunday Express, then, virus threat still critical. That's the picture of a pretty drawn-looking Boris Johnson on the front page. There's a lot of those pictures around. Sunday Mirror, rather than Fridays, which I picked up off the desk upstairs. Medics warn fatal flaw in Trace and Track app. It will fail to find half of cases. Plus golf and angling to be allowed, normally called fishing. Angling. Actually, to be quite honest with you, I am very, very keen on playing golf. I know. You'll say posh. No, I'm not. I just want to play golf with my mate. Is that right? Sunday Telegraph, stay alert. Prime Minister's new message to the nation, 5-tier warning system that we were hearing about earlier on. And I I've got the money section of the Daily Telegraph here, which I will be going through with David Buick in just a second. To America now, 7 here on LBC. Former President Obama has strongly criticized his successor Donald Trump over his response to the coronavirus crisis at a private yet conference call. He called the US handling of the pandemic an absolute chaotic disaster. More on this from Derek Myers, senior reporter for Newsnet in Washington, D.C. Hello, Derek.
Good morning.
Who'd know it was an election year?
3,000 people from the Obama administration were on that call.
Private. So nothing was going to come out of that then.
About as private as you can get with 3,000 of your closest friends.
That's right. It's like that's the Zoom call from hell. So what's the what was said about Donald Trump? What's he been on about, Mr. Obama?
Well, someone recorded it, so the audio is leaked online, and some of the highlights was that the former president called Donald Trump's handling of the coronavirus a chaotic disaster, and vowed to go for his opponent, Joe Biden, and campaign as hard as the former president can to ensure that the current sitting president is defeated in November.
Yeah. Okay. Chaotic, absolute chaotic. What do the American public make of this? You know, this is a bloke, the president of the United States, was talking about detergents being ingested or injected and could make a difference. I mean, I know it's laughable, but people then went out and did it, which is of course what happens because not everybody has got much upstairs, and they do it because he's the president and they think it might help or save them, and you know they shouldn't be making decisions for themselves anyway, half these people, but they did it. That's how stupid he is.
Yeah, one of the things that former President Obama had mentioned was that it would have been a tough thing to handle regardless who was president in terms of the overall response as a country to coronavirus, but that President Donald Trump does not help matters at all and certainly does not do what's best for the country. But again, he did say that it would have been hard and challenging no matter who was in the office. And you're right, we talked about that on your program, I think it was last week or the week before, that a lot of people did do this. We saw numbers go higher for poison control.